The Football Kickoff.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
All right, very welcome along. Every Friday morning around about 11:30 we go live on our social channels with the Football Kickoff. It's brought to you with Sky, all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can leave a comment there if you want to get involved in the conversation that we're having. And I'm delighted to say Phil Egan is with us in studio, and on the line we've got Keith Treacy. Gents, you're both very welcome. Keith, I might start with you. Good morning to you, how are you?
I'm very well, how are you?
Yeah, good. You know Sean Dyche. What's he like at this stage? Early doors in a new gig, showing everybody his boss, head shaved as tight as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it's I seen the first day. I watched they do the first days of managers at clubs now on YouTube and all. And I was having a quick look at it, and day one was the bleep test. So the first thing he wanted to do was get the fitness levels of all the lads, and it all just remembered it was all so familiar to when he came in at Burnley, because at Burnley we were one of the favourites to get relegated. He came in for 6 months, and then the following season he got us for pre-season. And one of the first things he did was he made us fill out a sheet and said, if you were in the opposition dressing room, what's the first thing you'd be saying to your new teammates? And there was a general consensus in the room that we thought we were a bit nice and a bit soft. And the next day we had to train with shin guards, and that was it moving forward from now on. And there was tackles flying in, there was fights, but he got everybody on side. And I only said it to my wife the other day. I absolutely loved the man, but it was so much hard work under him. But somehow he gets the best out of you. And believe me, I wasn't a starter for him a lot of the time for Burnley. I was coming off the bench. I started every now and then, but he managed to keep me on side, and he did that with a lot of people. You just have a love for him. And even now, I'm an Arsenal fan. They beat Arsenal in his first game, and the first thing I did was text him to say well done, and he just said, "Cheers, son, I appreciate it." And I give Everton a huge boost to staying up. I'm very concerned where the goals come from, but with Sean Dyche there, one thing you will definitely get is motivation from the Everton players, and I think that's what the Everton fans want. They want to see players that will put a bit of sweat on the shirt, will run through brick walls. Hopefully, some talent will come up behind that, and they can back it up. But look, I think they're in a much better place than they were under Frank Lampard. I have to be honest.
What's the difference between what you're seeing under Dyche and what you saw under Lampard?
I think they have the bit in between their teeth. I really do. I think he's going to motivate them. There was such a bad feel around everything with what's going on at ballroom level, and that can seep onto the pitch as well. And when you have players like Dwight McNeil who's coming in, he's not very confident. He needs something to happen for him. But Dyche will be in his ear all the time saying, listen, you're doing what I want you to do. Don't worry about the outside noises. And egos will be all just stripped back, and they will start working hard. And when they got beat by Liverpool, they did look like a team. Like half the team was still wanting to play the Frank Lampard way. Some people were starting to play the Dyche way. And it was a little bit of a mix match. That's what I seen. But Dyche will quickly eradicate that. And you'll either be on his wavelength or you won't be in the team. It's as simple as that. And he will get players... Like he will play a 4-4-2. Every player in the world, every professional player in the world knows how to play a 4-4-2. It's very, very easy. So he'll get people to fill holes. He'll fill gaps. He'll make them rigid. They will concede an awful lot less goals. But like I say, I'm concerned where the goals come from. If a Calvert-Lewin can start hitting the back of the net, they just need somebody to start hitting the back of the net. Even a Dwight McNeil and Alex Iwobi, somebody. Because I do think Tarkowski and Cody can do enough to keep them in the league. And like I say, motivation is a big thing. And I'm trying to put my finger on why I love the man so much, and I can't give you an obvious. He took a big thing in me. He loved me as a human being. I think that was reciprocated in both of us. But as a manager, to me, in my eyes, I've worked under some great managers: Mark Hughes, Graham Souness, Giovanni Trapattoni. But for me, he's up there as the best I've worked with.
Right, that's really interesting. That love that you had for him, was that common amongst your teammates? Like you weren't an outlier here?
No, not at all. I wasn't an outlier. I know Kieran Trippier was a big fan of his. I spoke to Trips. I watched the podcast the other day, and the first thing Kieran Trippier did when he won the league with Atletico was FaceTime Sean Dyche. He was still on the pitch when he FaceTime Sean Dyche, and it's just little things like that I think he even Danny Ings is a big admirer of his. I know me and Ross Wallace are close. He's a big admirer of his. there's so many players in that era that he took over, and he just motivated us all. He made us a team. He made us believe, and he brought people like Stuart Pearce in to watch us training. And Stuart Pearce, this is probably 2 weeks into the start of the season, said, lads, if you can keep that intensity in training and you train like that throughout the season, I would back you to get promoted. And we all thought he was mad. We were like, he's mental. We're never going to get promoted. And game by game by game by game, it just started to happen, and it just fell into place. And he managed it absolutely perfectly. But I have to say, there's so many different instances where he got. I mean, Ross Wallace. I'm talking about Ross Wallace and Kieran Trippier. Loving him. Ross Wallace actually headbutting Kieran Trippier in training one day and burst his nose all over the place. And Dyche's reaction to that was, Ross Wallace had to pay for us all to up to St Andrews for a round of golf, and he had to pay for everybody. And it just got. He obviously apologised to Trips. It shouldn't have happened, and it just got squashed so well. And it wasn't a fine per se for Ross. It was more of a team building exercise for us all to go and play golf. And he just handles little situations like that really, really well. And yeah, I think the general consensus of the lads loved him. And like I say, I wasn't even playing, and I loved him.
St Andrews not cheap.
Not cheap, no. It was about a 2 week. It worked out with about a 2 week fine, so he knew what he was doing. So look, Ross was doing very, very well. He didn't mind too much.
Right, Jesus. And did Trippier deserve it? Obviously not.
No, well, Trips was playing right back, I was playing right wing, and Ross was playing left wing for the opposing team in a little 11v11, and the ball went over my head. It was running out for our goal kick, so I turned to walk back to the halfway line. Next thing I looked back, and Trips' nose was all over his face, and Ross was just in the height of it over something. I didn't really see what happened, but listen, it was quickly swash. Ross waited for them in the car park the next morning to apologise, and it was quickly forgotten about.
Right. A nice golf trip for everybody. You're like, well, unfortunate circumstances, but like, St Andrews, very, very nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people were saying we should do it a lot more often. Have a few fights in training.
The thing about the shin pads, right? Like it obviously came up again. He's doing it now, and he referred to the 360. You got everybody sit down and kind of analyse everybody above them and everybody below them, everybody beside them, and it's like it seems like it's management speak, but the way you talk about it is like very practical. Analyse yourself, be honest, and then we're going to share that with everybody so that there's this kind of release of tension where everybody has an opportunity to say something meaningful about the people they're working with, and either they tell the truth or they don't. But if they don't tell the truth, everybody knows.
Yeah, exactly. There's no hiding place on that dice. Players have GPS systems and all now, but when you look in the mirror, you know yourself if you're coming off or you're not doing what you need to do. And he was always such a great motivator. And honest to God, when I heard it was maybe Bielsa was getting the Everton job, I'm not so sure if that's who you need going into a relegation battle. But when you heard Sean Dyche coming in and getting it, I honestly thought they'll be safe, they'll be fine. And I'm obviously crunching the numbers now and looking at it a little bit more closely. The goals are a big worry, but look, they will concede an awful lot more or less. If you can get the crowd on side, I know there's problems at boardroom level, but if you can get them on side, it'll be brilliant. And some of the things with Dyche, people go into this, sports science, that. We went down to Photo Island for his first pre-season, and there was obviously we were doing runs, times, all this stuff, but we had a day that was just for the gaffer. There was no scientists, no sports scientists involved. We turned up, there was tractor tyres just on the pitch. We had to pick them up and roll them, and as it was rolling, the other players had to stop them, so we were getting tyre burns and everything. And I think we were about 20 games into the season, and lads were starting to get tired. And he had a video of us doing all this, and he said, lads, if you remember the pain you felt going through that day, you don't feel that now. You're nowhere near the threshold you got on that day. And it just revitalised us and gave us an extra step. So although a lot of it is quite simplistic with Dyche, a lot of it is really, really good. And he puts little markers in your head and lets you know. And just when you're starting to feel tired and you're starting to believe what maybe the media might be saying, he's very, very quick to come in and let you know that you're the master of your own thoughts, and don't let anybody else tell you how you're feeling or how the club should be playing or He's very good at just making things easy and simplistic for lads.
Phil, before we came on air, we were chatting about this game. It's the 3 o'clock kickoff on Premier Sports. I'm wondering why you'd pick Everton Leeds over maybe Man City Forest, but you were saying this is the game that you want to see.
Absolutely, yeah. This is a massive game because you can have teams going for titles or teams going for Champions League, but nothing compares to what it's like for a relegation battle. Like the two massive clubs. Obviously Leeds are only back in the big time and they just about survived last season. Everton were very close to going under. You think back to the Palace game where they secured their safety, but they were 2-0 down in that game and they came back and won. So whoever wins tomorrow, obviously Leeds are ahead of them at the moment, but Everton, I was actually very surprised with how bad they were on Monday. I know they have a terrible record in the derby, but I thought this was actually a good chance for them, given how well they played against Arsenal, against a Liverpool team that are short on confidence. But because Everton didn't really attack the game, I thought from the start, Liverpool worked their way into it. They got the goal on the break and the second half was very comfortable for them. But it's such a big game and it's one I've been looking forward to. I was looking at that game, and then next week obviously Leeds play Southampton. I was kind of thinking this is Jesse Marsh bringing Southampton to Ellen Road.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. But in terms of what Keith is saying as well about Sean Dyche, because there's so many problems at Everton, certain players will use those as excuses. He won't let them do that. And just in terms of the shin guards, he's also banned snoods and scarves from training because he said you don't wear them in a game. He said it's quite simplistic. You don't wear these things in a game, so why would you wear them training?
Yeah. It seems old school, and I can see how some of the international players and international managers are rolling their eyes, but it also makes some sense at a fundamental level. We're going to train as we play, maybe not with the exact same intensity, but close enough to it.
The shin guards thing is interesting because I can always remember as a kid having massive shin guards, and they were actually a little bit awkward, but back then I probably thought, yeah, they're probably the safest option. But I didn't wear them in training, but then I felt awkward wearing them playing a match, because whereas you look at someone like Jack Grealish, he has the smallest ones possible. So much so you look at you don't even think he's wearing them.
Yeah.
Plus he wants to show off his giant calves. It's
a double-edged, double whammy. I mean, if I had calves like that, in fairness, I'd be getting them out all the time.
Yeah.
Go on.
I actually think I played with a player that had bigger calves than Jack Grealish.
Oh, right. Who?
Stephen Warnock.
Oh, right.
We used to call them Popeye calves. They were absolutely huge.
Did he like that? Was that like, yeah, call me Popeye, I've been on my spinach?
Yeah. He had a couple of different nicknames, so he was all right with the Popeye calf one. Yeah, he wasn't too bad at that. But they were the biggest calves I've ever seen. They were even bigger than Grealish's.
Wow. The other ones are obviously not safe for broadcast, are they?
No.
Fair enough. Maybe some night.
Maybe some night, yeah.
What do you think of what's going on at Leeds, though? Like we were chatting after. Like, you must have an idea of who you want as your manager, and you must have made a few phone calls in advance of sacking the guy. At least if you're running the club properly, you have a replacement ready to go.
Yeah, you would have thought so. If they're going to sack Jesse March, which they did, then they've got somebody lined up or somebody on the fringes ready to come in. Because we all know how football works. They say there's no tapping up, there's none of this. It does happen behind the scenes. We all know that. And for Leeds not to have had anybody ready to go in, why sack him? Just keep him there. Keep him there. Maybe the results turn and you can keep him. But yeah, for him not to come in, I think a couple of people have turned it down in the background. I think that's been highlighted. But looking at the squad, I can't see why. I know at the minute they're sitting 17th, only a point above Everton. It's a huge game on the weekend. But you look at Harrison, Somerville. I'm a big fan of Wilfred Yonto, who's on coming in. I'm loving watching him playing. If you can get Bamford to start hitting the back of the net, I think Leeds can ease away from this. I know defensively they're not great. They score goals, but defensively they let in an awful lot. But I think they have the bones of a team there that can keep our relegation. But yeah, when people are having conversations with the hierarchy and they're shying away from it, saying, I don't really fancy this, there's alarm bells going off there.
All right, that's the 3 o'clock kickoff on Premier Sports. The first kickoff on Saturday morning is Aston Villa against Arsenal at 12:30 on BT Sports. You were saying the big news in world football is that Tyrone Mings has signed a new deal.
Yeah, two things guarantee a goal: is a new contract or you've just had a baby. So Tyrone Mings has got the contract.
First goal scorer, 10-1, whatever.
Yeah. Well, football has a funny way of throwing things up where you've Unai Emery now in charge of Villa. Arsenal need a win. If Arsenal win tomorrow, then there's very little talk of the Manchester City game because they don't play City until April in the next game at the Etihad, and then it's just business as usual. But Thomas Partey, Arteta's just done his press conference. He said they're going to assess him today. The difference when he doesn't play, they lost at Old Trafford without him. They lost the other night without him. I thought Jorginho did okay in terms of what he did with the ball, but defensively he's not as strong. He doesn't see the danger, and if he does, he doesn't have the same physicality to be able to get himself out of trouble the way Partey does.
Yeah. So if he's not playing, you give Villa a chance of winning the game or just breaking even?
Well, those half-12 games I find they take a while to get going, and even I wonder just what happened the other night. It's quite a quick turnaround. Arteta's talked about that as well. You know, if they were playing Champions League, this wouldn't happen. This is what they've brought in, where Arsenal played on a Wednesday night. Chelsea played on a Wednesday night. Chelsea couldn't play at 12:30 tomorrow, but Arsenal can because they're not in the Champions League. But that at the moment, that's their aim, is to get back into the Champions League. But everyone just feels that was a decisive blow that City struck on Wednesday night, the fact that they won. Arsenal still have a game in hand. And I wonder as well, if City do edge ahead in the title race, will that actually just take a little bit of pressure off Arsenal? Will they start going on a run again when they become the chasers? City, as good and as well they took their chances the other night, certainly aren't fixed.
No, I do wonder if the transition that they're going through is so pronounced, though, that we're going to only really understand it in 18 months' time if everybody's still there and they're not relegated. You know, there's so much going on there at the moment. We can talk about City in a few minutes maybe, but what did you make, Keith, of Arsenal and how they dealt with what they were supposed to deal with midweek?
I don't. Look, Arsenal have, in terms of their last couple of games, they're having a little bit of a wobble. But you know, the Manchester City one, for me, I wouldn't look too deep into it. I know they got beat 3-1. It looks quite convincing. But for me, they competed for large parts of that game. I don't think we're outclassed by Manchester City, which can happen to anybody on that day. But they weren't outclassed. I thought it was a really competitive game. Arsenal were pushing towards the end to get the equaliser, and Haaland puts one away. But by and large, I thought Arsenal competed quite well. I don't think Arsenal will be thinking about the next leg or the next game in the league against City, thinking we don't want to play these again. I think they'll be thinking, yeah, okay, we felt that power and maybe we'll be able to deal with it a little bit better. In terms of they lost to Everton, didn't really turn up. Okay, put your hands up. That can happen to anybody. There was always going to be a new manager bounce with Sean Dyche going into Everton. They got bullied. Fair enough. That can happen on the day. But the Brentford one as well. They didn't play great against Brentford, but the Brentford goal was offside, and they could have easily got over the line and got 3 points there. So although there is a wobble, I think Arteta can take he can take snippets out of the last couple of games and say, listen, put the Everton one to bed. We were very poor in that. Brighton, we should have won the game. We should have got 3 points. He can put the emphasis on the referee for getting to draw the lines. And City, City can beat anybody on the day. So I wouldn't be reading into that too much. Go and get back on the wagon against Villa. I think Trossard is going to be, he's going to become more and more important to Arsenal as it goes on. I know Saka's doing excellent. I know Martinelli's doing excellent. But having somebody to be able to come off the bench who's on the level of Saka and Martinelli, you know, it's not a B player coming in. He's somebody who can, if he was starting, you wouldn't be too annoyed because he's a super player. Jesus will obviously start to come back into the mix over the next 2 months as well. So, look, I was always saying Champions League football and Arsenal are in dreamland. We're sitting second in the league. We're putting up a great fight. We still have a game in hand. I'm over the moon with how it's going. People are saying, Zinchenko and Jesus, we should have been expecting this. I don't think anybody was expecting Arsenal to be doing as well as they are. So, look, it's a tiny bit of a wobble. But if they can go and get the win against Villa on Saturday, then I don't think it's that bad of a one. We all knew the wobble was coming. It's just how quickly Arsenal can get out of it.
The Unai Emery derby adds a little layer of intrigue.
That's it. That's why football just has a funny thing, or a funny way of throwing these things up, where you think of how badly it ended for Unai Emery, and a lot of people would have thought you'll never see him back in the Premier League. Obviously goes away, does really well with Villarreal, as he's done in most clubs he's gone to. And it's been mixed with Villa. They've obviously had a couple of bad results, so they need to get back to winning ways, or even produce a performance. But if Arsenal can score first and settle down, then they should be able to win that game. But if they come away without 3 points tomorrow, then the wobble starts becoming a bit more of a wobble, and then thinking, is the pressure getting to them?
Yeah.
But I would agree. I thought they were like City at 36% possession the other night. That never happens with Pep Guardiola teams. That'll tell you how good Arsenal were at the time. Just a few little mistakes they made. Obviously, Tomiyasu gets punished, Gabriel gets caught out. Even being indecisive, there was that moment when it was 2-1, Xhaka's on the edge of the box. You're thinking, shoot. And he was just caught in two minds. He's got an absolute hammer of a left foot. You just thought, why not shoot? But yeah, if they win tomorrow, as I said, the City game becomes irrelevant, and then they're, as Keith said, they're back in the wagon.
Newcastle against Liverpool kicks off at 5:30. That one's on Sky Sports. The early game obviously on BT Sport at 12:30. This Newcastle Liverpool game, Keith, is really, really interesting now, because Liverpool put a performance together, and they had what looks like their first choice attacking trio: start, play well, create for each other. And then Diogo Jota comes off the bench, and I think Firmino's back as well.
Came off as well.
Virgil was on the bench. So all of a sudden, what looked like a disastrous wasteland of a season, we were getting texts on whatever morning was after the game going, well, if we beat Newcastle, we're only 6 points off fourth. And it's like, season's only halfway through.
With a game in hand.
So... but you got to beat Newcastle, and beating Newcastle anymore isn't like, we'll roll up, it'll be 2-0 after 15 minutes and we'll just play it's not going to happen. So it's a really, really big game.
It is, and yeah, for all the doom and gloom that's around Liverpool for the sport, if they have been sitting in ninth at the minute, if they can go and turn over Newcastle, like you say, they're only 6 points behind, and it's probably even too early to say we're starting to run in. We're only 20, 22, 23 games in some cases. So look, but what I'm seeing from Liverpool, I know, look, take the Everton one aside, because even if they'd have lost that game, I'd say that's a derby, take that aside, anything can happen in them games. But when you look into the games they're getting beaten, the games they're drawing in, I mean, I go back to the last 5 games. We got beat by Brentford 3-1, and you're thinking, like, Brentford had a good, strong team, but you didn't see Brentford doing that to Liverpool, certainly not last season anyway. And then they go and back that up with a 3-0 loss against Brighton. And then it's a very poor 0-0 draw against Chelsea. And then they go and get hammered 3-0 by Wolves. And, if this was any other manager that didn't have the credit in the bank that Jurgen Klopp has over the years, I think there'd be huge question marks over him. But look, there has been, I accept all. Van Dijk's missing, Jota's out. There's a couple of players gone missing here. Maybe the midfield is not what it used to be. I get all that, but I still get that Jurgen Klopp should have seen this coming. There should have been people coming in the door to facilitate all this happening. And yeah, I don't know. I think they're not defending anywhere near as well as they have. They're not scoring anywhere near the amount of goals they used to, and they're nowhere near as formidable in the middle of the pitch as they were. The energy levels are not like they used to. The stats are backing that up. They're not sprinting as strong as they used to. And yeah, it's very, very like when you look at this, when you look at Newcastle and Liverpool on paper, it's a Newcastle win, isn't it? That's where Liverpool are at this moment in time. And like I said, I know they beat Everton, but I can't see past a Newcastle win here. I think with it being in St James's as well, the place will be bouncing, and I think Newcastle will put down a marker. And Bruno Guimaraes is missing; he's suspended, but I still think Newcastle will have enough.
And if they do, it's a real statement win from Newcastle as well.
Yeah, well, Liverpool are the only team to beat Newcastle, and there was needle in that game. Fabio Carvalho scored in the 98th minute. There was 5 minutes of injury time put on, but Newcastle had an injury during that injury time, and when Liverpool scored, the benches clashed. So there's going to be a nice bit of needle in this game. Newcastle have kind of levelled off a bit where they're drawing games, but they're not losing games. So Liverpool need to go there and win. And I get what Keith is saying. He's 100% right. Like, what I've found so baffling about watching Liverpool, injuries happen. You have to adapt. 2 years ago, Klopp didn't adapt when they lost their centre halves. He was playing Jordan Henderson and Fabinho in midfield, and eventually he said, right, I'm going with Nat Phillips and Reece Williams as my centre halves, and they won 8 of their last 10 games and they got the Champions League place. Watching them the other night, their 2 goals came from breakaways. I just, when you're not as good in midfield as you have been, where there's spaces, why not just sit a little bit deeper? You've seen the other night, they've devastating pace on the break. Núñez absolutely skint Idrissa Gueye, who's no slouch, and people saw, obviously, Salah, Gakpo, they have pace. Why not just sit a little bit deeper and less holes in midfield, play on the break? And now
at Newcastle is now actually a perfect scenario for them, where they can let Newcastle have the ball and say, okay, come on, let's see what you guys have.
And I don't think Liverpool fans are going to think, we're not great to watch at the moment. It's not about that. It's about getting results. And luckily for Liverpool, they have one ray of hope in midfield, and that's an 18-year-old kid, Bajcetic, who now you're in a situation as he has to start.
Yeah.
And does Klopp start him tomorrow with the Real Madrid game in mind?
As in, you
he has to play both games.
Well, and that's the ball game right now, though. But there's a month between the two Real Madrid games, is there?
No, but I'm saying next week's first leg.
Yeah, but
is on Tuesday.
He can play these two games, though, right? 'Cause he's only 18.
He's only 18, but is he
recover?
Like, I think back to one of the games. I'm trying to think where he cramped up at the end, towards the end, and he's
maybe give him an hour of this game to start with.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what team selection he goes with. But Newcastle have definitely looked a little bit flatter, but it's a 5:30 game. That place will be hopping.
There's a strong chance that the Everton performance was more muscle memory from Henderson, for example, and even Andy Robertson, who had a bit of needle about him again. And like, you need that from them.
Yeah.
There's also a possibility that they use that as a springboard for the rest of the season.
Possibly. If they don't, then we'll just think people will say Everton were poor. But what I did notice about, say, the first 20 minutes of that game was you could see how short in confidence players like Fabinho and Joel Matip, when the ball is near them, Liverpool fans are looking away, just thinking this is just a car crash waiting to happen. But they actually had a lot of possession in the second half, and they started to look a bit more comfortable.
And look, I think any swallow that might suggest the summer is coming, Liverpool fans are going to look for. On Sunday, two games: Manchester United against Leicester, 2:00 kickoff on Sky Sports, and Spurs versus West Ham at 4:30. Kelechi Iheanacho's in one of those veins of form at the moment, Keith, where everything he touches looks amazing, and he's very streaky. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see him on the scoreboard at the weekend. Where are Manchester United though at the moment? What's going on with them? Like, honestly.
I like what United are doing the last, probably since the start of the season. They had a bit of a poor start under Ten Hag, but it's been really, really good since. Defensively, they got an awful lot better. When Casemiro came in, he didn't look match fit to me, but all of a sudden, I mean, there was a bit last night against Barcelona. I think he had one of the young lads, either Gavi or Pedri, in the corner, and he just sort of made them look like kids. He held them off, kicked it off his shins, won a goal kick, and he just stood there looking at him as if to say, "You've a lot to learn yet, mate." And it was just brilliant from him. And the way he can get forward as well, he doesn't just sit in front of the back forward. And he will do that, but he'll get forward and give you a goal. And Rashford has just started to hit form, hasn't he, as well? I think Erik ten Hag just seems to have released something in him to get him playing again. He's saying he takes the game an awful lot more seriously than he did. 12 goals and 3 assists this season already. It's brilliant stuff from him. 4 goals these last 4 games. And like I say, it's very, very hard. The one thing I wasn't sure about United, they looked really good. They could get Garnacho on the ball, Rashford on the ball, Martial's coming to the party. Anthony looks okay. If he could grow a right foot, he'd be brilliant to be able to go on the outside of people as well. But an awful lot of stuff is starting to click at United. And the one thing that really impressed me last night is they went 1-0 down in the new camp, and you're thinking, right, then let's see what you're all about now. And then within 2 minutes, I think it was, Rashford had the ball in the back of the net. And it was really, really good. They had to grown a bit of backbone, playing defensively really, really sound football. And Rashford looks like he can hurt you from anywhere on the pitch, even if he's on the edge of his own 18-yard box when they're camped in. He has the legs to get up to the edge of your 18-yard box within seconds. And yeah, I thought United were unlucky last night against Barcelona. And in the league, sitting in third, when you look at how well Arsenal are doing, Manchester City and Newcastle are flying as well. So look, United are right in the mix, and I thought United would struggle to get Champions League football this season. I thought Ten Hag would take a while to embed himself, but the way he's handled Ronaldo, I think, has done wonders for the club. Yeah, I think it's all looking really good for United. And if you think, I don't think they'll challenge for the title this season. I think that might just be beyond them. Although obviously points wise, it's not. That's just my own personal opinion. But I think next season will be a big season for Manchester United.
Okay, can Leicester trouble them?
Definitely, yeah. Leicester have got their mojo back. Brendan's smiling again. Tete, good signing, on loan from Shakhtar. He was over in France as well. And Maddison is obviously back as well. You mentioned Iheanacho, and he obviously brought Suter in from Stoke as well. So he got a few signings. This was a bit of a gripe of Rodgers at the start of the season. There was a lot of noise coming out about he couldn't sign players and he was getting frustrated. But he's got a few players in. A few players have got their back fit as well. And do you know what? It's the kind of game, if United aren't clinical, they could get caught in. And again, there will be one eye on that second leg at Old Trafford next Thursday. Rashford, what do you do with Rashford? You can't leave him out, but if you're a United fan, you're thinking, what happens if something was to happen to Rashford? Because he is on fire at the moment. So,
I know, you've no choice though, right?
No, but I think what Ten Hag has done really well is he's made changes, and he's happy enough to say, look, prime example, last weekend against Leeds, Elland Road, he goes with Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw. If you had said that, if Ralph Rangnick did that last season, he would have been absolutely ridiculed. But people trust Ten Hag because he's now starting to produce. But then he brought on Lisandro Martinez, and then he brought Shaw back out onto the left, and he brought Garnacho on, and it all just... They struck. They won the game in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. And
he doesn't seem to mind doing that. Just a bit of patience.
Okay, so you think that there's a possibility that maybe he gives Rashford a bit of a rest, considering...
He
might say, do you know what, you can start on the bench. But then again, it's
Pete's
very...
point, winning the Europa League would be a massive thing for them as a staging post. So we talk about this all the time. Not every trophy is the same. For some teams, winning the Europa League is the end of a cycle, and it's like, oh, we just got this trophy. But for them...
It's the start.
Exactly. It's like
and I would expect them to beat Newcastle in the League Cup final next weekend. I think, like,
we can come back to that next week.
Yeah, no, I think obviously Newcastle.
Wait, see how Newcastle get on against Liverpool.
Yeah, well, thing is, Bruno Guimaraes will be back for that League Cup final. Yeah. But if United win the League Cup, and you know they'll fancy their chances now of beating Barca next week. Now, I actually think it'll be a tougher game. They had a lot of space at the new camp last night. It was interesting how he used Weghorst as well. You saw Weghorst, you just presumed he was going to play up front, but he basically played as an 8 behind Rashford, and Sancho played out on the left. So anything Ten Hag is doing at the moment is working tactically, and I wonder, will other managers be able to work out what he's doing? But he seems that good tactically that he'll always be one step ahead of you.
Well, for a change, Manchester United fans are feeling themselves. Spurs versus West Ham kicked off at 4:30. We hear Antonio Conte is going to be spending a bit more time in Italy. Keith, is that the beginning of the end for Conte at Spurs, do you think? It's obviously been precipitated by his health, but it's been on the cards for a long time.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. It could be the way out. If he's looking for a way out, it could be an avenue to get out of the club. But look, it's Spurs are just so inconsistent, aren't they? It's like they're sitting 5th in the league, and yeah, they're probably about where you would expect them to be looking on paper, but it's the performances. Some of the performances have just been so poor, and it's just hard to know what you're going to get. They go and beat City, then they lose 4-1 to Leicester. In terms of points, yeah, they're okay, but Harry Kane, 17 goals, 1 assist. He needs help. Son is not the player that we're used to seeing in the Premier League over the couple of years. Kulusevski, he's just getting little injuries here and there. He's dropping out for a couple of weeks, a month at a time, and he needs help. It can't all be Harry Kane. I like Spurs, I really do. I love Højbjerg in the middle, Bentancur. I think that there's a decent team there but you just don't know what you're going to get. They turn up. It's like a boxer going out and they wait till they get a bloody nose to think, oh God, we might as well start playing here. They've been behind in so many games. They've been reactive. They're not going and imposing themselves on teams. They're sort of going out there and saying, let's see what these have before we decide what we're going to do. And you can't be like that at Tottenham. They're supposed to be a big club. That they want to be an elite club. And yeah, I don't know. Especially when I heard that Conte is not going to be there on Sunday, it did make me lean a little bit towards West Ham because, like we say, the footballers are very, very fickle creatures, and any excuse they can use, I think they will. I think West Ham will go there with the bit in between their teeth, and yeah, with it being a London derby, I think Spurs might just shy away from it and West Ham will wrestle the result.
It's good when you can have two goalkeepers playing for your team as well. It's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, speaking of goalkeepers, I think Hugo Lloris, I know he's had his critics, but he's still far better than Fraser Forster. And Keith mentioned Bentancur, he's out for the season. Like, that's a massive loss for them. And surely now is the time to start playing Richarlison, because it's not, Son just hasn't delivered. You keep playing him and you hope that he comes back to form, but
He tends to come back to form after you drop him.
maybe,
Doesn't
yeah.
he? Like, he responds to being dropped. Like, the one time he played well this season was after he was put back in the team, having been dropped out of it. So
Yeah, but also as well with Richarlison, you just need, like, you know what you get with Richarlison, he's going to rough people up, and maybe that's what you need.
yeah, they could do with a little bit of that, all right. Okay, Spurs vs West Ham kicks off at 4:30 on Sky Sports on Sunday. The football kick-off with Sky, all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Keith Treacy and Phil Egan, folks, enjoy. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, Ger.
The football kick-off.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.